Greetings, class. We're in lecture number nine, and we're discussing Asian American and the Asian American experience in the United States. And so we go to the year 1849, where we get the concept of the 49ers. And we have the gold rush in California. And this gold rush, this influx of people, include a great deal of Chinese immigration that was not very well regulated. If you could get here, the passage was not cheap, but there wasn't the level of government oversight and immigration that we see in other periods of time. But these Chinese folks were definitely steeped in what we call otherness, where the white population treated them as the other, an outsider, a them to the white people's us. Know the term xenophobia, actual fear of people. Know the Chinese massacre of 1887. Again, you get 19 people dead, plus another 15 are lynched and hanged. The Snake River Massacre of 1887, where Chinese folks that were out in the wilderness, and I believe it was Oregon, were stalked, robbed, murdered for their gold. And in all of these occasions where, again, we see this level of expression of power, where the white dominant group gets to express this level of power unchecked, no charges are ever brought. And again, this is a disturbing pattern of minority relationships here in the United States. So we see actually the active importation of Chinese labor for the completion of the railroad. Know about the Page Act of 1875 to limit the influx of Chinese women because they were blamed for prostitution. Now, interestingly enough, we continue to have this same thing happen today. It's 200 years later, and it's the prostitute blamed for the prostitution, not the men. Blame the woman that somehow she lured these men, who were clearly on their way to church, into prostitution, which of course is an absurd thing. We have the railroad completed in 1881, and lo and behold, we have the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. Make sure you know that. Know the two court cases, we referred to them before, Ozawa and Singh. Both cases are basically definition of who's white, who's worthy to be a citizen. In the 1890s, we have the Philippine War. First, we have Americans fighting on the side of the indigenous Filipinos against Spain. But then later, when the U.S. wanted to basically take over and become the new boss, they fought against this. And President McKinley, his statements and his attitude are clearly reminiscent of this time, that we'll civilize them, that's what they needed to ascribe and assimilate white superiority. December 7th, 1941, obviously pivotal day with Japanese-American relationship. No Executive Order 9066, signed by FDR. We'll talk more about that. And again, the idea is that these are forced removals of Americans. When we often say the order removed Japanese or Japanese Americans, we sometimes lose fact they were Americans. Why? Because they were assumed to be much more likely to spy. Even though we have no real record of any Japanese American being a spy. On the other hand, we have lots of records of both German and Italian Americans giving information to their governments. The atomic bomb, more racism. It's dropped on Japan, not the Germans or the Italians, because, again, white people considered the Japanese a lesser. The concept of the model minority, again, this is where Asian Americans are treated as, oh, why can't you be more like the Asian Americans? They do so well here. And you go, well, what's the problem with that? it robs the Asian Americans of their achievements. Again, that whole thing of, Asians are just good at math. They don't work hard at math. They're just good at math. And that's absurd. Another case of Vincent Chin in Detroit, beaten to death by two white men. Thought he was Japanese because of the decline in the automotive industry at the time. Both these two, they beat the man to death. They got no jail time. So again, this is the story, the fingerprint of this power relationship and minority relationships. They don't really get into very much about immigration from Southeast Asia. So this is for us. There's we were referred to as boat people. This was after the end of the Vietnam War. You see a great many people from Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam coming to America. And they were desperate. And why? Well, because the U.S. government had abandoned them. Now, here's something that I think, we lose track of when we look at this history. The Hmong, the Martinyards, the Lao, people in Cambodia, they had agreements with the American government. We invited them. There was an agreement. You help us fight the communists, and if something magically goes south, we'll take care of you. We'll make it okay. So Americans treated this group of immigrants as if they had done something wrong, as if they were running across a border and doing things wrong or illegally, when in fact, we invited them. That was our deal. You fight with us and we'll take care of you. But one of the groups, the Hmong, H-M-O-N-G, show us a different case. The Hmong, not necessarily the model minority. The case of the Hmong, there were a group of Hmong sent to Minnesota, in Minneapolis. I would say a terrible fit, considering these were people from a tropical sort of cloud forest area, and we send them to Minnesota, very snowy, very cold, and a lot of their kids get involved in gangs and criminal activity, and everyone is surprised because, again, they're not following the model minority case. Why were we so involved in Vietnam? Well, here again, the white supremacy domino theory, where we have to fight communism at all costs. Even after elections were held in Vietnam, we went ahead, backed the losing side in basically a military coup. We commit war crimes against Cambodia and Laos, bombing the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And all of this is done because we feel, as white Westerners, we must control the poor Asian folks that just don't know any better. Now, the secret word for this lecture is Ozawa, O-Z-A-W-A, from the court case. But I want to talk about the video that you have there to see about the forced relocation. Again, Executive Order 9066, signed by FDR. And again, 2/3 of the people that were gathered up were American citizens, forced to basically pack a bag and leave. And then, of course, the good God-fearing white folks took all their property when they were gone. How many were forced? A total of 117,000 were relocated. And it's remarkable. 33,000 volunteered to serve in World War II. The American government still very paranoid about them, even though they're volunteering, wouldn't let them serve in the Pacific Theater, sent them to the European Theater. And this is the 442nd. And this is the most decorated group in the Army. We also have a case where on July 27th of 42 in New Mexico, 2 people were shot. They had been forcibly located. They were taken to a place and They were, quote unquote, escaping. They were in America. They weren't under arrest. But when they supposedly got out of the line they were supposed to be in, guards shot them to death. Also, I want you to be able to know who Fred Karamatsu is from this video. Make sure that you know that information, including in 1988, eventually they're given recompense. If you were still alive in 1988, you were given $20,000. You can imagine that real estate that was seized as being abandoned by, again, good Christian white folks that had been previously owned by Japanese Americans, that would be worth millions of dollars. They got $20,000. And these weren't just nobodies. If you're a Star Trek fan, George Takei, who plays Sulu on the original series, he was interned and actually wrote a book about that experience. Anyway, this will be a short one, so let's be glad about that, and we'll see you in the next lecture.